of school business officials.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today. With me is Deborah Cunningham, my Director of Education and Research, who's here to help answer any complicated questions. Again, I want to echo my colleagues from superintendents and school boards. We wanted to express our gratitude for all the support the legislature has provided to public schools over the last couple of years, the increases, the 6%, doing away with the GEA last year. We really appreciate all your efforts and your ongoing efforts to help schools. You have our testimony in front of you, and I'll just give you some highlights from that. Obviously, we join with our colleagues to urge you to reject changes to the foundation aid formula phase-in. We believe that's important to maintain that commitment to provide equity, adequacy, and stability to school aid. We welcome the changes in calculating poverty that were recommended by our own foundation aid task force back in September, including using more accurate census data to calculate poverty, removing the cap on income wealth that recognizes the depth of poverty in communities, as well as transitioning to direct certification data. So we welcome those changes. While recent graduation rates show improvements, more needs to be done to address the disparity between high and low need districts. Our report that we released yesterday that's included in our testimony details some of the issues that are afflicting some of our highest need school districts. It shows graduation rates in low need districts were 30% higher than high need districts. Looking at combined wealth ratio, the achievement gap is even greater. School districts in the lowest wealth deciles graduated 70% of their students, while those in the wealthiest graduated 94%. Our 8th grade standardized tests, districts with the least wealth only graduated 7%, or had 7% scored proficient or better in math, and 20% scored proficient or better in English. While students in the wealthiest districts, 55% scored proficient or better in math, and 67% scored proficient or better in English. These dramatic achievement gaps are closely linked to foundation aid due. Low need districts are owed $508, and high need urban suburban are owed $3,109. There's actually a chart attached to our testimony which shows the disparity and it highlights the importance of phasing in the foundation aid formula. On page 12, there's a foundation aid due per pupil in an 8th grade math proficiency, and that really demonstrates really well those school districts that are owed the most are doing the worst in terms of proficiency, both in math and in English. And for the 4th year, also in terms of the foundation aid amount, I think my colleagues talked about the inadequacy of it. Truly is only $428 million in new foundation aid, and of that, $150 million is also set aside for community schools. We believe that amount is definitely inadequate given the needs demonstrated in our report and in the testimony of others. Also, for the 4th year in a row, the tax cap is below 2%. We believe the cap should be made a straight 2%. And at the very least, the legislature should enact the changes that were made back in 2015, dealing with pilot properties included in the tax-based growth factor, as well as providing an exclusion to the tax cap for school district share of the cost of BOCES capital projects. Mandate relief. I know the governor has included some mandate relief in the budget for the last 3 or 4 years. We believe it's lacking and limited in scope. We have many recommendations, as well as our colleagues from other associations, about how to make incremental mandate relief. Every little bit helps, whether it's cost sharing for transportation costs, whether it's removing the duplicate needs for fingerprinting of bus drivers. We also recommend doing away with a lot of the internal audit requirements that were imposed upon us. So there's lots of different things that the legislature and state policymakers can do to help school districts besides increases in the foundation aid formula. That's mostly dealing with the tax cap and mandate relief. We also support the consolidation of the pre-K programs, and we welcome the expansion of the grant program for farm-to-school programs, although it falls short of our request to increase the school reimbursement rate for school lunches from 6 cents per meal to 25 cents, which hasn't been changed in over 40 years. So to end my testimony, I'd just like to do a quote from my own op-ed piece in the Times-Union that was 2 weeks ago. 1 year can make an enormous difference in a student's academic success. Every year that goes by without fully funding foundation aid is a lost year for tens of thousands of students. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to ask.
Questions?
Answer.
Yes. Mr. Lopez?
Thank you, Chairman. Just quickly, I know your organization had put out a report which called for changes in foundation aid.
Correct.
And I know you made a positive reference to the changes that the governor made in his proposed budget. When you talk about funding the foundation aid more robustly, is that including those changes or using the existing foundation aid?
It includes those changes.
Okay. And I've asked this of a couple other folks. My region I represent is largely rural. It's northern Appalachia by definition. And as I look at the mantra of having all students equally educated, in my view, our small and rural fall behind with advanced placement, lack of even distance learning facilities, you name it. High cost per pupil, but very, very limited resources. Is there more adjustment needed to address? I see your high need, low wealth, but I have trouble equating the urban and rural. The rural piece seems to be understated, and I'm having trouble equating what I know to be happening in rural America with the need that you're describing. So my question for you is there more tweaking that needs to be done, particularly for high need, low wealth, and particularly rural schools?
Yes. I mean, the changes that are being proposed by the governor in his executive budget are welcome changes in terms of, again, addressing poverty, addressing using new census data. The governor's proposal, as well as our proposal and many others, also maintain hold harmless, which prevents rural school districts from losing state aid if the foundation aid formula was fully operational, so to speak. So can other things be done to help particularly rural schools? Yes, that's in terms of cost savings, in terms of allowing school districts to share transportation, doing away with some of the mandates. There are other things that the legislature and state policymakers can do in particular to help rural schools deal with their costs. Because it's very difficult, as you know, coming from a rural area, it's hard to merge those school districts. You just can't consolidate school districts that cover hundreds of square miles. So how can you provide a better education, a more quality education to kids in rural schools? I think Bob Lowry mentioned regional high schools as one way of doing it, using the internet more. There are ways to bring AP classes, honors classes, through regional high schools, through the internet, using technology. There are ways to get around the remoteness of rural schools and the lack of resources.
I did a quick analysis of schools in my district, and we've had per pupil costs in the mid to high $30,000 range, which is staggering, but still they are not receiving the services they need, and we have a diseconomy of scale in the rural areas. So those comments are very welcome. I was just wondering, too, if there was anything from an aid category standpoint. So the mandate relief, the allowing schools to share more services, I think we can do more with BOCES and the statute. But is there anything else from an aid category standpoint that we should do?
I think our biggest concern is with foundation aid and having it fully funded. Another way of saying this is that a funding formula is like a garden. You have to constantly tend it. Inequities crop up, and you have to review that over time and see the consequences of the funding formula.
Right.
And our paper on the resource and achievement gap points out an opportunity gap in every region of the state, including the rural areas, that needs to be addressed. And right now, the funding that is not provided under the foundation formula is exactly where the problems are.
So rather than a wholesale reduction of the foundation aid, as proposed by the governor, you're suggesting taking the changes that he's proposed and funding it more robustly.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
The other important point is that the full amount of foundation aid is based on a cost study of actual school districts and actual students. So that's a research-based amount that we're trying to get to. And so just to throw that away and say, well, we'll just kind of do a little better each year, that's a partial solution to a big problem. We need to have a full solution.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. New York State School Facilities Association. Fred Cobell, Chair, Legislative Committee.
I thank you all, and I congratulate you on your stamina. I will be